All right, guys, welcome back. So let's do a few more examples. If this is the first video you're seeing, this is part two. So you want to be sure you see part one, which had some intro. Um, yeah. So try to see that part one, follow the examples, try it out yourself, work it out, and then come back to this video. All right, so I'm gonna go back, share my screen now, and let's do a couple more IP examples, and let's see basically in just in terms of conversion, uh, how we can determine from an IP address what portion is the host, what portion. So well, from an IP address and a subnet mask. Subnet mask is actually what does the main job, right? So from a subnet mask, what portion of the IP address is network and what portion is IP is a host, all right? So I have some things written down here just for clarity. Um, so just give me one quick second here. All right. Oh, do I have up here? So yep. So again, just to be clear, I actually copied and pasted something here. So if I paste this here, so CIDR, what we talked about earlier in the first video, CIDR basically means classless inter-domain routing, a simple way to represent an IP address and its network mask, network slash subnet mask concisely, right? So for the example we did in part one, this was the example here. And we said that this is literally same thing to what we have up here, right? So in long form, you're going to have 192.168.0.0, and the subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. Inside the notation, you say 192.168.0.0/24. So if you're not too clear about that, go back to part one video. I provided a bit more explanation on that. Um, Again, for clarity, so you have the number of addresses you have is 256, right? The number of addresses you have. So when we look at the example we did in part one, you can see that the first address is 0, and the last host, sorry, the host address is 0, and the last host is 255. Well, that's 256 numbers, right? So going back up here, you have 256 addresses. But I put a note here, easy to forget. People sometimes forget, so there's a tendency for you to say, here's the first address and the last address is 256, right? Because you kind of forget there are 256 addresses, but if you did this, you're going to have, 257, all right? So always remember to subtract one. It helps you to be more accurate, right? Getting the broad, and then just with practice, all right. So well, let's work on these examples. I have two IP addresses here, and you know maybe things to get clearer when we work on this new example. We're going to use the same /24, which is again the subnet mask 255.255.255.0. In a subsequent video, we might change the subnet mask so you see what happens. Basically, if you change the subnet mask to, um, you can either to 24, to 25, 26, or even less, 23. Basically, what you're doing is you're increasing or you're reducing the number of hosts available on the network, right? When you think about it. Um, so here's the first example we did. Technically speaking, right now we have a full set of hosts, a full set of addresses here, right? The usable host will be 1, 0, and 256 are taken. All right. So what you have in the middle is sort of 254 actually, usable host. All right, usable host. So if you, well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that right now, but technically speaking, if you wanted to increase the number of hosts you had on a network, then you will just add one here, add zero here, and then this will become this will be 254, right? That will become 254. So this will be a slash 23. So it'll be 8 here, 16 plus whatever you have here will be slash 23. So that will be slash 23. Okay? Which means that you have increased the number of hosts. All right? You have increased the number of hosts. All right. We'll spend some more time on, that's like subnetting, when you're increasing number of hosts. So we're going to go to that, but right now let's just concentrate on determining from an IP address and subnet mask what portion is the IP and what portion is the network, what portion is the host. All right. I'm just going to make everything here back to 0, 0. Oops. Just put it back to 0 all the way here. So zeros. You always want to start from a sort of a clean slate. Just going to make this 0. Then I'm going to put the correct information. I'm going to make this all zeros. All zeros there. Remember, we use this shading color just to tell us all the network portion or the network bits. Here, I'm going to make this also. All right. And take this out, take this out, take this out, take this out. All right, so we have a standard subnet mask, which is 25, which is 255.255.255. So basically, I should just leave all the ones here because this is all ones here. All right, so again, go back to part 1 if you need to, so you have the background knowledge of how we arrived here. Okay, so here's the first IP address we want to work with. I'm just going to copy that here and put that here. So 192.168 is that the IP we're going with? No, that's not the IP we're going with. Yeah, well, that's the IP we're going with, yes. 192.168.10.121. Okay. So 192 here, 168.10.121. All right. So this is slightly different from what we had before when the IP we had was .0.0. Okay, so we'll see how this changes anything and what changes exactly. So when we come here, again we do our math, right? 192. So you minus that 192 minus 168. After a while, you probably can do all this in your head. So we take a 1 there. And then we have a sorry, I didn't do that correctly. 192 minus 128. Yeah. So 64 is left, and here's a 1, and everything is 0. When we come here, same thing, 160, 128. So you go here, you clear that 168 minus 128, left with 40. So you're going to have 1 here, skip, have 1 here, left with 8, skip. No, you skip that. And you have a 1 here. So 128 plus 64 plus 8 will give you 168. 128 plus 64 plus 8 will give you 168. So 128 plus 32, sorry, mixing up my numbers there, plus 8 gives you 160. So that's correct. All right, for 10, we skip 128, we skip the next one, skip. We come here and we put a 1. 8 plus 2 will give us 10. So we put ones over there. We come over here. We're gonna skip that. So we go to the next one. You can get 64 in, you can get 128 in one into 121, but you can get 64. So again, if you do your math real quick, that will be 121 minus 64 leaves you with 57. So you skip the first one and put one here. That's 32. So 57 minus 32 leaves you with 25. So you put a 1. Now you're trying to get 16 out of 25 minus 16 leaves you with a 9. So you put a 1. You put a 1 here and leaves you with 1 because 9, obviously 9 minus 8 is 1. So you skip 4 and 2 and go to 1. And that's what you have. Okay. So now the process of ANDing, because we remember we used the Excel formula, so it looks like it has helped us solve the problem. I guess it has solved made things easier. So Excel can sort of make things easier for you right there if you know how to use it correctly. All right, so again, just to be clear on here, using the ANDing process, all the ones, you multiply basically one, that's a one, that's a 1, 0 and 1. 0 and 1s are zeros, 0, 1, 0. So you got all zeros here, you got 1 here. So just to be sure, you cross-check that. 1, 1, 1, 1 is 1, 1, 1 is 1, 1, 1, 1, 0 is 0. So when you go down the line, you see that you're pretty accurate here. 1, 1, and the Excel helped us out. Okay, so this leaves you with a network address. So I got to take this out and do this correctly. So network address here is going to be, basically it's the same thing up here because you have 128 plus 64. So this is 192. For your first octet, second octet, same thing, 128 plus 32. That's 160. Yeah, sorry. 128 plus 32 plus 8 gives you 168. Now for this portion, you only have 2. So that's 10 right there. That's 10. And this is going to be, can you guess it? 0. All right. So in this IP address, using the IP and the subnet mask, your network address, if we go here, maybe we should actually try to put it down here. Well, that's your network address that we can see here, your first address, your last. So your first usable, right? Your first host address, that is when you start to apply IP addresses to your different computers in your network. The first uh the first computer is going to have that first, or I guess the first address you can use for the first computer and so on and so forth. And then here's your broadcast, which is the very last address. The broadcast is used when you literally want to broadcast information to all the computers, right? In the network. Sometimes you have to do that. And remember, you always have to think about -1 here, kind of like in the back of your mind. So I'm just going to drag this down and see if I can use this here. So, so just to take this out. All right. So this is your last, so your address is 192.168.10.0. So this is the address of your gateway address, or what you refer to as your router address, the very first address. In fact, the router is, you know, is how messages go in and out of your network. So your router will most likely belong to your ISP. So all your messages are going, back and forth through there, you know. Um, Kind of like I guess we can compare that to your zip code, right? There's one zip. Hold that thought about zip code. I don't want to confuse you here, in terms of the network address. But network address is the address of your router. That's how messages come to you and go out, you know, to the internet from you, to you and through, and out, going back, coming in and going out. All right. All right. So the first host address is going to be the next address after this. So that's going to be 192.168.10.1, right? That's the next address, the actual next address consecutively. All right. Uh, so actually, most times you probably want to do the last address before you do the first and last. So you want to do the broadcast. So if broadcast is going to be 192.168.10. So your broadcast is always determined by your subnet mask, right? Your subnet mask. So your subnet mask tells us that here you had, 24 basically. And remember that should I say in each segment here, it's 256 addresses, 256 addresses. You take out the first and the last. So same thing here. This is your host portion. You have 256 addresses. All right. So in this case, the first one is already taken. So if you have 256 in your mind, you got to do the math and say, sorry, not 256 exactly. You got to, in your mind, you got to do the math and say, okay, that's -1, right? So 256 addresses, but when you write it down, remember that the network address is 0, starts at 0 when you count. So 256 addresses, 0 to 256, sorry, 256 addresses, and you start counting from 0 to 255. That's how you get 256, all right? Let's say that again. In total, you have 256 addresses. But the way you count them or the way you read them is 0 to 255, right? So if you have 256 in your mind, you go to -1. There may not be any need to -1 if you know it's 0 to 255. Then you just do 0 to 255 here, right? So always depending on your subnet mask. Here, the subnet mask gives us a full range, right? A full range of 256. All right. So we do the math. The first is 0, the last is 255. That's the broadcast. So automatically, the last usable host address is going to be 192.168.10. You guessed it, 254. All right, so that's solved there. So if you go back here, so that's the IP we just solved now. All right. So using the ANDing process, the ANDing is really the key technique here that helps us determine the network address. All right. With the conversion of IP address of decimals to binary and back. All right. You always have to do that converting from decimal to binary and back, I guess, to be more accurate, right, with your, should I say, calculations, to know how many IPs do I have? Sorry, how many hosts do I have in this network using the subnet mask? So hopefully that provides some clarity. Let's do the second IP address here. That looks a little bit more interesting, but you know, it's always important when you see an IP address, as long as none of the numbers exceed 255, right? They should never exceed each of the octets. So let's put this in here and let's see what we get with this one here. We're trying to determine, remember, we're trying to determine what is the network address. Once you get the network address, right, all based on the subnet mask, then finding the broadcast, finding the first usable host and the last host is probably easier. Okay, so again, always helps for you to just, zero out everything here. You don't want to if you're using an Excel sheet, if you're doing on paper, I guess you have other ways of making it easier on yourself. But here, I just like to make everything zero so I don't run into any, forgetting something. Okay. Um, well, you notice that uh, I didn't actually, I think I did. Well, I did the and in here instead. So, hopefully that's clear to you because I noticed that I have all zeros here. I think I just automatically use the network row here, right, to do my ANDing. So yeah, once you're kind of used to this, you skip some steps because you know what you're doing. So no problem. All right, so 89.140.10.32.210. So this is going to be 89 dot 140.32.210. All right, so let's see what that is. So we skip the first one, skip. So here we put a 1 and 89, um, 89 minus 64. Now you notice that I'm using a calculator. That's just so you can like the process is transparent for you. You might have an exam, you might have some kind of an exam test, and you may not be allowed to use the calculator. You might have to do it on paper. All right. So but I'm using a calculator so you kind of see exactly transparently how I'm working out the numbers. Okay. All right. So we got 25, 89 minus 64. We got so yep, 25 is 32 is not going to go in 25, so we skip. We go to 16, and so we say minus 16. We got 9, so we put a 1 in 16. We put a 1 here because we have 9 left here, and then we have 1 left. So 1. Okay. And then we go to 140, we can put a 1 here, 140 minus 128, minus 128 is 12, so we can skip, 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 put a 1 here, we'll have 4 left, and then we skip 2 and 1. All right, for 32, we skip, 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 we put a 1, and that's all we need over there. And for here, we put a 1. What do we have left? 210 minus 210 minus 128. So we got 82 left. We can put a 1 here. Minus 64. We got 18 left. So we skip this. Skip. We put a 1 here. And we have 2 left. So we go to 2. And that should be fine. All right. Now the ANDing has been done for us thanks to our Excel formula. So you can see that if you come down here, well, I got to take all this out. So to determine your network address, you look at your ANDing. Again, because we have the Excel formula, it kind of did the math for us automatically. So here you can say this is basically same as what you have up here. Generally, it will be the same. The numbers here might be the same. If you have a 24 bit subnet mask, so the first 3 octets are most likely going to be the same. So you can compare here 64 plus 16 plus 8. So same thing. So this is going to be 89. 140, this is the same. You got 128 plus 8 plus 4. So that's about right. So that's going to be 140. And I come over here. This is also 32. So that's 32. So here's all zeros. So that's your network address, right? Or the IP address of your gateway, right? Of your router. So when we go to the last, to the broadcast, again, 89, 140, 32, and obviously it's the same subnet mask, 24, which means that you have a full range in the host. So this is going to be 256, but then you take out, you do the math and you say that that's 255. All right. And that's what you have there. So in between, the next number that comes, if I just drag this down, this is going to be 1, and same thing, 89.140.32.254, right? So you come up with this. So from that one, so from this, one IP address slash subnet mask, you can determine the network address, the first host, the last host, and your broadcast address. All right. Um, and all these have to be accurate. If you use some kind of a, shall I say, online online application to do this, let's just say, for example, this number was off. Actually, let me undo that. Let's say for some reason you came you your network address in the third octet, ended up being 36. Well, it's gonna take, it's gonna give you an error. All right? Because that just wouldn't be accurate at all. And these are not just random numbers. Once you do the math, you do the conversion from decimal to binary and back, you're going to get an accurate ending, which gives you the correct net. Remember, these addresses are given out to devices. So the numbers have to be accurately calculated and assigned, right? Assigned to devices, right? And this is a way for you to avoid having duplicate addresses. It's kind of like having, you know, two driver's licenses that have the same number. There's definitely going to be a problem. Or two people that share social security numbers or share, even student IDs. So it has to be well determined and well calculated. But it's not random, right? So you follow the process, you are going to have the accurate network address, first host, last host, all properly set up. So the next set of examples or lecture we're going to have is going to feature, or we're going to talk about subnetting, right? Basically, subnetting is when you need more hosts, right? You need more hosts. You need to you need to sort of manage your network. So you're creating a lot more hosts in different subnets, segments, so they're easily managed, right? You don't want to put all your hosts, it's like putting all your eggs in one basket. You want to put them in several different, should I say, um, subnets so they can be managed individually, right? You want to be able to manage them individually so that, for example, if one subnet is down, the other subnet, it doesn't affect your entire network. Think about it as a large pizza, right? Well, imagine if you slice the pizza into 6 slices. Well, let's say one of your friends eats one slice. Well, you still got the other slices, right? But if one of your friends eats the whole pizza without being sliced up, maybe that doesn't make sense, or maybe it does. So it's a way of managing individual networks, sub-networks. But then you got to do the right addressing. So we're going to do that in the next few lectures. All right, I'll talk to you soon.